Welcome to the Dreadful Dialogue. This is a podcast where we chat about all things horror, from deep dives of movies, books, TV shows, interviews. And today I have a brand new guest. Her name is Lauren, and she's from Happy Haunts Library. Welcome to the podcast, Lauren.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to clown around with you.
Yes, I'm down to clown. Now we're going to be chatting about the brand new book. Oh, it's not a brand new book. I'm sorry. A brand new movie is coming out about this book, Clown in a Cornfield. But the first book came out in 2020 and it's by Adam Cesare. I think that's how he pronounces his last name. I've never actually heard it said. It looks like Cesare. I think it's Caesar. I'm sorry to the author, but I do love your book. And we're going to chat about the first book in anticipation of the new movie coming out. And we'll do our best to not completely spoil it, but we're going to kind of go through a little bit of the book, some of the notable moments, give you guys a little synopsis, talk about the characters, talk about our predictions. But our goal is to not full on spoil it, because we do want you guys, if you're somebody who reads books, read the book, listen to the book, and go check out the movie. It's coming out soon. So
I read it twice. So the first book, and then I read the sequel, and then the third book, which there may be a fourth. I think I heard him say. Maybe I might be wrong on that, but I hope there's a fourth, because I have my thoughts and feelings on the third one. So I'm excited because I really love the first one, and I know that's what we're going to be talking about. So I'm ready.
Yeah, same. I've read all three books, and I read the first one, and then when we said we were going to cover this, I did another reread because I was I really wanted it fresh in my mind. So I hadn't heard that about a fourth book, so that's really cool to know.
Don't quote me on that.
Yeah. Don't worry, this is not a facts-based podcast. We do our best to provide what we do know. I mean, as it is already, I was I'm pretty sure I listened several times to somebody say his last name that way, but I've never heard him talk and somebody professional, somebody introduce him. So I'm I hope I didn't mess his name up.
I think you're on the right track.
Okay. So I'm going to read a little synopsis about the book first. So this book takes place in Kettle Springs, which is it's an idyllic town in Midwest, with Midwestern vibes, that has cornfields, secrets, and a very steeped history. Their town mascot is Frendo. He's this grinning clown that the town celebrates annually with a Founders Day parade. And our main character is Quinn Maybrook. Her and her father, they just moved to town. He's the new town doctor. They're the newest residents of Kettle Springs. And she's only moved here for about less than a week, when she's going to have to quickly learn who to trust, how to navigate this foreign town. And she's going to befriend a group of friends led by another main character named Cole and Janet. And we learn how some of their past events and their current behaviors have shaped the townspeople's treatment of them. And Frendo the clown, he initially seems like this harmless green clown, but he's going to take on another form as he begins to terrorize the local teenagers. And all of this is set around cornfields, like the book says. And we have to figure out who's going to survive. Is Quinn going to survive? Are her friends going to survive? What townspeople are going to survive? And again, we're not trying not to spoil this, but if you see the trailer, you can clearly see the clown is up to no good. But we're going to need to know, why is he attacking this community and what secrets lie here? So it's kind of a little synopsis for listeners. Lauren, are you scared of clowns?
I am not afraid of clowns. I think that I have some I think for me, when I notice clown fears from people, I think it is deeply rooted in something from their childhood. Mm-hmm. And so I don't have any core clown memories. I think maybe Pennywise coming out of a drain from that mini series for It, that had stuck in my brain. I think I saw that way too young, and that definitely left something in me. But I think I'm more interested in the clown. And I think aesthetically, it's so fascinating with the history of clowns and that kind of thing, that I don't necessarily have the fear. I think I more so enjoy how they play with something that should be, they twist and take something that's supposed to be so joyful and they make it scary. I find that fascinating. So yeah, no real fear here.
Got you. Oh, I'm super scared. Well, I'm not so scared of them much anymore, but as a kid, I was scared of them. And that's exactly the clown that scared me, was the original. Yep. Like the new Pennywise. I think he's cool looking. But the original miniseries one with Tim Curry, yeah, he scared me as a kid. I think my mom was watching the movie, and I was we had this tall couch. Maybe it wasn't even that tall as a kid. It seemed tall, but I could hide behind there and watch stuff. and I watched it and it freaked me out. I think I read about John Wayne Gacy way too young as well, so that like
Oh,
added
yes.
to it.
That'll mess you up.
Yeah. So and then I've kind of come to the terms of that, like I'm more scared of like what I call classic looking clowns. Like they have the like pure white, the big shoes, the big nose, the hair. Like the clown that they're using in the trailers for this movie, he's scary looking to me.
Oh, yes. Very scary. Not the clown I was imagining in my head when I was reading the books. Even more scary. Like I'm a little afraid of the movie. There's a part of me that's like, can I sit through this? Because I like horror, but I like the softer versions. Like I don't necessarily enjoy the visceral nature of horror movies. And that clown looks intense where I'm wondering, like, can I sit through this movie?
Yeah, no, I'm wondering the same thing. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to get myself into? But I'm like, I have to watch it. Like, how can I not? And I've only watched the trailer once because I've started this new thing, like, as of like the last year. I'm like, I only watch the trailer once, and then I'm like, don't watch it anymore because I want to like fully enjoy the movie as much as I can. But he's definitely creepy looking, so I have the same feeling. I watch a lot of pretty like heavy stuff in the horror genre, but I'm like, ooh, like he's that kind of clown that scares me.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I'm not even going to watch the trailer. I'll just like look at the teaser trailers that they have. Because those, I don't know, trailers these days are just showing way too much.
Exactly.
But I think you get a good idea of the vibe of the movie. And it seems pretty intense for this clown. I don't think there's any like clown movies that are coming to mind that are not super intense. But like, I don't know if you compare it to like the Pennywise, It from the miniseries, I think it was Tim Curry who played that clown. So it seems softer. It seems like creepy in a way where like they're trying to cater to this like childhood version of a clown that then becomes evil. Where the one here with like the mask, like everything just seems so like dark and sinister from like the very beginning. Like they're not playing with the same kind of clown aesthetic as they were like in the Pennywise one. So I think that really grounds it in something more along the lines of like a slasher film.
Yeah, and it is, and that's my favorite kind of film. So I'm gonna have to just force myself to. It'll be another way to like, as I joke, face my fears of clowns. And people always laugh at me. They're like, "How can you like scary movies but be scared of clowns?" I'm like, you can still be scared of tons of stuff and be into the horror genre in different ways and watch different scary things. It's just you find different ways to deal with them.
Yes, that's me in spiders. That's me in sharks and water. Yep.
Yeah, I don't like spiders.
Part of the appeal. So I'm right. I get you.
Yeah. All right. So we've both established we're going to have to deal with these clowns.
Yes.
The clown and what's going on here.
Happily.
Because if you get in the book, this clown is everywhere, right? He's the town mascot at the parade. Everybody's wearing this mask. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with having to see so many. But what about, have you ever lived anywhere? Because again, this book really deals with the trope of kind of like isolation at times. Have you ever lived somewhere that's remote or like stayed somewhere that's really remote?
I think a few times living in Northern California, vacation spots are going to be in more remote places because it's so different than the dense city life. So for me, I feel most familiar and I have a sense of connection with horror that's more like close quarters horror, where like it's one location, one setting, and you're experiencing the horror of whatever thing when there's a lot of people around you, but nobody is necessarily like connected. I think that's like such a city thing, very modern, where you have all these people and like yet you still feel isolated. I think that's how maybe more I'd connect. But I think that's what appeals to me about this book is it's so different. It's like so in contrast to my daily life where you have just fields and you have large stretches of land and you're literally isolated and there's just nature. And that is so frightening because you can't like yell for help. And even like there's horror books and movies where people do that in a city and it's like nefarious for its own ways. People also don't respond in those moments. And yet they're there and they hear you and you know, and that's like its own level of horrifying. But for this level of isolation, that's like purely like you are on your own, you are in a field, you are combating both nature and this horror, this human horror. No, I've never really had an opportunity to really grapple with that sense of isolation.
When I was in the military, I went to Guam a few times, and one of the times when I was out there, we worked out in the middle of somewhere on the island. I couldn't even tell you where. Like, we had to go through all these gates. It's like what I joke in the military, like some secret squirrel stuff, right? And I can't even talk about what we were doing. It was so quiet, and we're in the middle of all these trees, and it's like there's 4 of us out there in the middle of nowhere, and it's a 12-hour night shift. The only thing we could hear was frogs creaking, and there was goats apparently somewhere because they were bleeding really loud. And when you had to go to the bathroom, we had to leave the building. We were going to go across the field, and that was the only time I'm like, oh my goodness, like somebody can murder me out here. Nobody would even mom, people might not hear me. I don't know. So
very humbling, very like, it's different. It's very unique.
yeah. And like, just like you, I grew up in like a city or like the suburbs. I mean, I wouldn't say like a big city. I live in SoCal, and I'm not far from like big cities and traveled to big cities. So that was different. And I think also, and it just hit me as we were talking right now, I think what added to the isolation with this movie or this book is the lack of technology. Our main character, Quinn, she came from Pennsylvania, and she lived in a big city, and now she's in the small town where everybody's always trying to use their phones, and they're like, oh, I don't have service, or their service is always cutting in and out. Even one of the characters in his house, he's trying to connect to his house cameras, and the same thing, it's taking a while to connect. And I think that kind of added to it.
Oh, yes. Yeah. The technological disconnection. I can see that on one hand being an important plot tool to make sure that, because I could imagine the author not wanting this to be something that's set like in the 80s or 90s, because I actually recently read Video Night by Adam Cesare, and I really enjoyed it. And that one's set in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think he wanted to do anything that was like very retro. He wanted it to be very much modern because the themes he touches on are very, very modern.
Yes.
But yeah, I could see that being very convenient for him to use, but also it's not so far-fetched where we wouldn't believe it in that kind of environment. So it does make you feel the extra level disconnection that we're so used to, whether it's like geographically close to other people, but also we've created this like globalized sense of connection, even if it's not always stable or available or like authentic. You still can rely on sending that text message or DMing somebody on social media, but in this book, you can't. So you're like a whole other level, a whole other ring of on your own.
Yeah, I think it was genius that he did that, just like you said, because it definitely touches on tons of modern takes, and people are going to have their own opinions on that. I'm very curious how they're going to handle that in the movie. In fact, it deals with, they don't come out and say names, but it definitely deals with some politics. It deals with a mob mentality, I guess you could say. There's a lot of themes in there, and I'm interested to see how they're going to handle that, if they're even going to touch on that or not. And readers can, when they read it, they'll be able to see what we're talking about. I'm not going to talk too much about that on this podcast at this time, but it's rated R, so we'll see where they go.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how they're going to be playing with like the space, the geography, because they go into some very interesting locations, whether it's people's homes that are like pretty large because they're from wealthy backgrounds, or you have the cornfields where the teens are partying, or you have like this body of water where people are jumping off and doing very risky things. Like the book does have various locations that I think would be really awesome if they're on screen. Like it's going to create this whole like summery vibe, even though I think it takes place. No, I don't think it takes place during, I think it does take place during the school year. But for me, this movie, even though cornfields are associated with, I think like summer? No. Yeah, I think it's like summer is like really where cornfields are happening.
Yeah.
But for me, I think of cornfields as like a very distinctly like Halloween fall thing. Maybe it's like encroaches on both times of the year. But yeah, for me as somebody who's never been anywhere where like there's actual cornfields.
Yeah, me neither.
I was associated with Halloween, even though I think it might be like a summer, spring thing. I'm going to love if they really take it and like they really focus on giving us some really interesting setting drops. I think it's going to be awesome. And I'm wondering if they're going to lean more into the camp that I think it could really bring to life, or if they're really going to be more like this is a slasher and this is a serious tone. So I'm really interested to see where they take it.
Yeah, I'm not sure where they're going to take it either. Like you said, how campy is it going to be or how serious is it going to be? But when I saw that it was rated R, I said, oh, I think they might go there a little more, because when I read this book, it is a young adult book, and it took a while. When I first read it, I was impatient. I'm like, when's something going to happen? And they did really good at setting you up, because they kind of make these teenagers unlikable in some sense because of the things that they're doing. They're I don't know the right way to put it. I'm like, we're both educators, and it's really easy for us to see the good in everybody. And I try not to get into that mindset. We live in a world where some people are like, oh, all these kids are just bad and this and that. And it's like, I think the writer wanted you to feel that way. They wanted you to be like, man, these kids are just out of control. I'm like, what are they going to do about them? And what's going on with them? That it kind of almost turned me off as an educator. I'm like, I don't want to be in that mindset. Like, I can't be in that. And I was also starting to kind of get slightly annoyed. And then just when you thought, I was like, I thought I was going to give up, some of the action happened. And I was like, this is a young adult book. Like, there's some really, it's a slasher.
Scenes. Yes, they went there. They really went there. So I'm wondering if those are going to be in the movie. Like, that's going to be wild. It's one thing to read it, then watch it. And I think it is a big critique that I have read about and watched, and just like heard people talk about this book, is that it does take, for all generations of people in this book, it does take a little bit too much of a simplistic view of them and not enough depth or dimension in terms of their motivation and anything that is grounding their actions as characters. And so I could totally see that too. And we come in with like such different experiences and understandings of young people that it does make me, like, it's very challenging for me to read young adult fiction as much as I love it. And there's maybe many cool premises for books. That's one thing that does turn me off, where I'm like, I don't think that's believable, or I just feel like that's so one note in their approach to young people that I can't get into a book sometimes. And that's been a newer thing for me, I think, recently, just kind of coming into YA books with that. So I kind of share that a little bit with my feelings towards this book, that it is a bit too simplistic in regards to many of the characters in the books across several generations of people.
Yeah, I agree with both. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, with the adults as well. So let's talk about some of the main characters, because I tried to keep up on the trailer. Again, I don't watch a trailer one, so I don't know. I'm assuming they're going to include everybody, but we talked about Quinn. So she recently moved from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And again, with her, there's also some social issues. She's dealing with the recent loss of her mom. Her mom was addicted to, I think it was opioid drugs. And that's like kind of a thing that they have going on in the background. And what did you think about Quinn?
I thought she was a very easy person for me to empathize with. I can relate to her in the sense that she was very like, she wasn't the child that her father had to worry about, in the sense that she's doing everything right. Like I related to that as like the middle child who was in a family of siblings where they're kind of going off on their own ways that made my parents' life a little bit more challenging. So I kind of saw her as older beyond her years, an older soul, and I could relate to that. And her dynamic with her father, I thought, was very sweet. I thought they had really good boundaries. Obviously, they're working through some things because of the issues with her mother that really like changed their dynamic in a way where like the father's gonna have to figure out like how to let her evolve and grow and be less of but like developmental presence as she like gets older into her teenagehood. So I found her to be very endearing. What about yourself?
Yeah, I thought too, I really rooted for her, like right at the beginning. I really thought, like you said, she was wiser beyond her years. I don't know if that had to do with the loss of her mother or she'd always been that way. I loved her dad too. I mean, we could talk about him as we're talking to her dad, Dr. Mayberg. I forgot his name already. We'll just call him the dad or the doctor. The pops, yeah, that's what I call my dad. I thought he really, even though he dragged her to this town, she didn't necessarily get dragged in the sense that she knew like it wasn't just for her that they needed to move, that it was for him to get a clean slate. And he was very open to trying to help her, like, okay, you're going to go to this party. All right, I get it. Like every parent's different, I'm sure. But he had the fact that he had so much trust in her, like, yeah, you can go to this party and we just moved here. That was really interesting that he felt comfortable allowing that.
That's a lot of trust. Yeah. Don't know who these people are.
Yeah. I mean, even in our day, my mom was like, well, whose house and where are you going? And granted, I ain't going to lie, in my high school years, I was out partying. Sorry if any of my students are listening to this. Okay. Be smart though, guys. Okay. It was a lot of trust on their end. And I really liked the dad. He seemed like he was very excited to be at this new town. And we don't go too much into him, but they're both likable characters.
Yes, yeah, extremely likable. And I think it's in contrast to a lot of other people because they're both like varying ages. So I think it's an interesting way to ground the story because I think you get a few different people's POV, but it's mainly going to be hers and her father that we really get. So I think we're supposed to really empathize and root for them. And ultimately, that's what I ended up doing.
Yeah, we don't get too much background on the other parents. I mean, we do get background on one of the parent, but we don't really get to find out their parenting styles, whereas with Quinn and her dad would do.
Yeah.
So another character is Cole Hill, and he's kind of the cool guy on campus. He's known for his YouTube channel, him and his friends, their antics on their YouTube channel. They have, his dad owns the Bay Pen corn syrup factory, and that's where Frendo the clown comes into play, right? He's on the building that Quinn can see from her window. He's on all the different town stuff, and he's the one that they're going to have this, and they have the Founders Day parade that they're celebrating. Did you have any thoughts on Cole?
I thought Cole definitely was set up as a character that you're supposed to find obnoxious and just like the poster child of Gen Z, where all they care about is like being perceived and building this identity that's very much like desirable and powerful and like, I don't care, I'm cool. So I don't necessarily feel like I had, like, because of my educator background, I wasn't going in thinking he was the most annoying person in the world. I think it's interesting how his story unfold, and you definitely feel more towards him in a more positive way, I will say, once you get to know him a little bit more. So I'm glad that there's like depth that was provided for his character as he went on. But when you talk about the little motifs and the little imagery of the clown everywhere, I'm getting so excited for that to be in the movie. I really, really hope, now that we're like talking about this, haven't had a time like really think about that, I really hope that the imagery is really hit strong in this movie. Like, this could be a really great, iconic, holy movie if they really like play their cards right and just really set up that atmosphere. I want atmosphere in this movie.
It's got the makings of a good franchise. I don't know how you felt when I read it. It kind of reminded me of Scream or Thanksgiving, which are like both modern slashers, but because of the lack of technology, it did have like an older slasher vibe because you took that out of the way, right? Because the older 80s and 70s slashers, you didn't have any of that. And those are both great movies. I think there's supposed to be another Thanksgiving too. Scream is obviously a very successful franchise. I think that with all that imagery that, Frendo has the potential to become a horror icon.
Yeah, and Adam Cesare, he is a student of horror. Like, he is obsessed with it, and he's a huge fan. He's written many books, one of which I just read recently, where he is referencing classic horror movies and really using those tropes and twisting them and honoring them. And I think it's all like intentional, that if we ever feel like there's anything coming up that feels like it's referential to something else, like, I think that's on purpose, because I think he does really know his stuff.
Yeah, that's good. So he's a student of horror.
Yes, absolutely. He's obsessed. Yeah.
Yeah, I know he was just at like the Overlook Film Festival, and I've been trying to listen to some of his interviews, and it's curious to see what's going to happen with some of his other books now that his name is really out there. I mean, of course, people read the books and know, but now people that have never even read his books, even if they don't go read them, which I recommend you do, they go check out the movie, they might go read some of his other stuff, and maybe that'll push for more of his things to be out there in terms of movies or even like a miniseries, a TV show. I don't know. Sky's the limit.
Exposure, yeah. And I do have a feeling, just based off of the one time I saw the trailer, that it might be very different than the book, I'm thinking. So that would be encouraging for people to read the book and know that it's not just going to be a play-by-play of the movie. But I think, yeah, I'm not going to be necessarily, because it has been, I think, a year since I read it. Or maybe that was like the third book I read. Yeah. I don't have it super fresh in my brain. So when I do watch it in the next month, I think I'm going to be very open to the interpretation they have to a certain degree, because there's some things I do have some concerns about in a negative way that I'll wait and see before I make up my mind, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think it's just going to be a play-by-play of the book. I think that they're going to go to some other places with it, and it's going to be a different interpretation. But I do hope that they hit specific notes in regards to a certain relationship at the end.
Yeah.
I don't want to completely spoil it. I think that's going to be interesting, because that might make some people mad, but I don't care.
Yeah, and it would be, I think, very essential to the larger themes of the story. I think it would hurt the messaging that the book really does have if they didn't include certain aspects of this movie.
And in the end, I think you need it, because the relationship continues on throughout other books and the future books. So it would be really weird for them to leave that out.
Oh, absolutely strange. Yes. Yeah.
All right. So another main character is Janet, and she's like the queen bee of the group.
She's the worst.
Man, I mean, again, you start to hear a little, you get a little tidbit about her background, and then you become a little more empathetic.
Yeah.
And just like you said, I'm looking at this through the lens of somebody who works with young people, so I find it harder to buy into these negativity towards them. But I also understand like that's what the writer wanted to do. But yeah, she kind of is the worst. She kind of eggs everybody on. I don't really have much to say other than like again, just she's kind of the stereotypical like bitchy girl in class, bitchy girl on campus.
Yeah. And I think the author does a really good job of like the first, maybe, I don't know, like 50 pages of the book, maybe even less than that, is really setting up this like cliched version of these teenagers. And then the rest of the book is them having to, like, we see parts of them that their peers aren't seeing. And then we as adults can like recognize, maybe the characters don't in that moment, but we can see, okay, this is why they are the way they are and how they present themselves to the world and their peers. And then there's a whole section at the end where they're kind of like grappling with the identity, the actions that they've been contributing to the world. And so I think he does a really good job now that you're really laying it out, these characters like one by one. I do think that there is more dimension for the younger people than other generations in the book. And one thing for Janet, I feel like I'm really concerned about in the movie is the casting of her, where in the book, I'm pretty sure she's Asian American, and that's a key part of, I think, her identity, her understanding the whole idea of like the model minority and the pressures for some Asian Americans that they've written about in the past and the present to be perfect, and that pressure contributing to young people's identity formation. If you remove that with the casting, which I see a photo here on the screen here of Cassandra Potenza, who looks very much to be white to me, I think it dilutes some of the messaging there. And so I don't know, I'm concerned. I have some questions like, did they actively try to find an actress that was Asian American who was available for this role? Was it just about finding somebody with like the acting chops? I don't know. That was sad for me to see that that's not going to be a part of the commentary here, because I don't see too many other actors in an Asian American background in it being featured in this movie.
Yeah, I don't think she is. I thought that same thing when I watched the trailer. I was like, I thought that too. I think she's the only minority character, if I'm correct. I don't think they really reference the rest of their background, but they did make it a point to point out that she was Asian American. Yes. So yeah, that's a little awkward. I was wondering,
the one person of color in the book is whitewashed in the movie.
Yeah, like you said, I don't know. And that's why I start to wonder like how they're going to handle, again, some of the kind of political themes and the references to the city and the references to the different state of mind of the older generation and the younger generation in this book, because there's a varying degree there's a spectrum of what they're believing. So I don't know. I hope that's not an indicator that they're going to completely leave out all of those themes in the movie.
Because as much as I didn't like her character in the beginning, I thought she was a very interesting character. So now that I see the ways in which they're changing the casting, kind of makes me concerned that maybe I won't love movie Janet as much as I love the book Janet.
Yeah, for sure. She's another one. You as you get to know her, you grow to realize, okay, everything is not, she's not showing us her true self at all times, and there's more to her. It's another one of them is Ronnie, and she's always known for her ponytails, and we don't get too I think the rest of these young people, other than maybe Rust, we don't get too much of their background, so I don't really have too much thoughts on her, but she is a main character. I don't know if you had anything on her that you wanted to talk about.
No, I think she's really just kind of a warm body in the room. I think really our core is going to be Quinn, Janet, Cole, and maybe Russ.
Yeah.
Kind of like he does kind of come in and out of the story there. Yeah. So they're kind of like the core four.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's Matt, which again, we don't really want. I'm not going to go into too much detail of him. In the book, he's the boyfriend of Ronnie. I think they describe him. I think they're both football players, right? Cole and him. And they say he's like short and stocky. There's Tucker, which, Tucker kind of same thing. We don't get a lot of details on them other than they're all a part of this group with Cole and Janet as the heads. And then we learn about Rust and that he was previously close with Cole. And now they're not as close anymore, but they do get along. And you did a really great job of saying, hey, he kind of comes and goes. He's not a part of the core group, but he is kind of a important person in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We get a lot of town people too, right? We have the sheriff. He's a big character. And then we have some other ones, which I'm not going to really, again, I'm not going to talk about them. I'm just going to mention them more so that we can have a note for later that they're in the book. Ginger's kind of a big character, or kind of a notable character. We have Mr. Vern, the science teacher, and then we have Trudy, who's a local waitress. I don't want to go into detail on them because I don't want to spoil anything. So they're kind of some other main characters people might want to keep their eye out for. And I'm curious if they're going to make it into the movie.
Yeah, they're pretty distinctive in the sense that like they are kind of creating through these characters. The author's kind of creating a sense of geography of the town. So I thought that was helpful to ground them as individuals so they don't just become like one group, like one blob in terms of like the adults that are featured in this book.
Yeah, because there is a lot of townspeople, as I'm calling them. But we don't get too much background on them. But those are kind of the ones that I think you did a great job, because they do talk about, like, even when I like was reading the book, I kind of like make little notes to help myself keep track of everything. I'm like, okay, there's a main street, there's an eatery, there's the factory, there's this. So it does kind of give you a little lay of the land. And having those characters, again, they're not main characters, but they're characters that help you figure out where everything is set at.
Mm-hmm.
Lauren, what did you think about how the author, did he build like suspense and dread for you at all throughout this book?
Yes, I definitely feel intense, visceral reactions with this book. And I think for a young adult book, I think it's very intense, very graphic. So I found that to be very surprising, because there are some very sweet scenes throughout, or things that are very touching and emotional in a very sensitive way. And then to have that immediately result into something very graphic and violent, I think just like it's like the whole whiplash feeling. So the book definitely made me feel dread and intensity, because it's very active. It's very like not like battles, but like it's a slasher where you're going face to face with this mass killer. And so you have to be very creative, and you're in these really interesting environments that I've never been in, like a cornfield or abandoned houses or sheds, or just places that are very agricultural, which is very opposite of like my daily life, where they're going to have to get very creative. I don't know what I would do in those situations. So I was just like a big question mark of how they were going to approach getting out alive.
Yeah, I felt that throughout, because every time you think like, okay, they're cool, they're safe. And even though you're a horror fan, like, you know that it just, there's still a lot of the book left. You're like, it can't just end that way. There's going to be more. You get like these moments of relief where you're like, okay, they're okay. They survive this. And then they end up in another isolated situation, right? It's not just the cornfields. There's the inside of the factory. There's inside of an abandoned house. There's vehicles not starting. There's so many different opportunities where you feel like, okay, we can kind of calm for a minute. And then that dread and that uneasiness comes back, because Frendo is around every corner.
And you really don't know who to trust. And that's another level too, where you feel that sense of safety. You're grounded in maybe a person that like you're around them, where you're like, oh yeah, like they will help me. They will protect me. I know them. And it's like, well, do you? You don't. So I think that is a theme of the book that I could lightly touch on. It doesn't really spoil anything. This idea of like who to trust, who should you be trusting, who is somebody that you should put your faith in. And I think that's really prevalent today, where the trust is in question, whether it's like the truthfulness of information that you're getting, the source of the information, like in a political sense, because this book does talk a lot about like politics and its commentary. So I think trust is a big theme of this. Well, I wouldn't say like a big theme, but like a sub theme topic that like grounds the rest of like these major themes that come up.
Yeah, that's a really good point with the trust part, because I started to even wonder as I'm reading it, I'm like, is there a supernatural element here? Is there not a supernatural element? And I'm not going to go into detail on that, whether there is or isn't. I'll leave that to the people when they watch it. But yeah, you definitely don't know who to trust. And that's why I really make sure to emphasize at the beginning, like, Quinn is new to this town. She's lived here less than a week. She's already having trouble just trusting people. I'm like, who can I even like talk to? Who will be a real friend, right? Because she's kind of befriended this group of Janet and Cole. And like we said, Janet's not a likable person. So she's already having to deal with like that teenager angst on top of now there's like a massacre going on, and it's a masked person. So we're not sure who it is or what it is. And I really thought that added to the element of whodunit type of thing, made it a bit of a thriller in that sense.
Oh yeah. And then even in the name of the clown, it's Frendo, right? And like to have a to have a good friend or to be a good friend, you have to trust. And it's the entity upon which you, in the story, you should not be trusting at all if you are these townspeople. So I think that's on purpose, and I like intention. And then I only kind of realize that now, like we're talking.
Yeah, the more that's what always happens whenever I record these episodes. Like in the moment, oh yeah, or like somebody brings up something and it kind of sparks something in your head. Yeah, I love that they even say like, "Don't leave a friendo behind," and
it's ironic because it's literally like the meta aspect of the author. We know we're in a slasher film. Like it's kind of like a wink in a way that's like a meta that kind of harkens back to Scream, which you referenced. You already felt like that vibe was coming, but it's not like as meta. So I feel like it's creative, the ways in which he's playing around with the theme of trust.
Yeah. So were there any scenes in the book where it started to raise off red flags for you? Like I know for me, and I'll tell you one of mine was when she looked at the cornfield. We talked about this a little early, right? When Quinn moves into her house, she's on the second story, and she looks out of her window of her room, and across the way, you know, she's got like her yard, and then I think there's like cornfields, and then she sees the factory with the clown. And the clown is all beat up, and because it's an old painting, right? It's an old mural. The writing is not on there. For me, that started to already give me warnings. Like, I mean, clearly the book's about a clown in a cornfield and that it was a scary book, but that also made me wonder what's going to happen. Is something going to happen at that factory? That was a scene that set the tone for me. Okay, this book is going to get good.
I can't wait for that scene to be in the movie. Like, I will be devastated because that's like setting up the atmosphere. That's setting up the dread. That's like the anticipation that like worked so well for you, where you're already figuring out, like, I can't trust this clown. Like, this clown is something to be concerned about. That if you like leave that out of a movie, especially, it's like so visual and so important. And you got that communicated to you in a book with words that I think will even speak volumes with a more visual storytelling medium. And I think for me, I love that for its atmosphere. And I think it's like the classic high school party situation in the very beginning, where you have one of the characters making decisions in a moment of like, it's so typical, like teenager in the sense. I don't know, that set up a lot of dread where like you learn a bit about the backstory of the character, how there's like loss for them, and it kind of adds some depth. And it's this sweet summer of hanging out with their friends and it goes wrong. And so I think that set up a lot of like, oh wow, like there is some darkness in this town. There's some things that they're not talking about. There's things that like are deeply held resentment. To me, that was like, okay, like, so we should be concerned that not everything is as it appears.
Yeah, that too. That opening scene, you didn't see that coming. Like you said, it's very teenager, very carefree. We're having a good time, and then something tragic does happen. I didn't even think about that as that way till you pointed it out. That yeah, that's really kind of setting the tone for loss.
Yes, yeah. In the very like early beginning stages, even if you don't like necessarily know these characters enough to care in the moment. For me, it's like, I don't know, I've been in some situations I could relate to all people who are impacted by that situation as an adult and a young person. As a young person, I made some very stupid decisions where as an adult, I'm like, oh my God, like I could have hurt somebody, or I saw my friends do that. Like they could have been hurt, or I could have hurt myself when we make these horrible decisions in these moments where we think we're invincible. So I could empathize with the young people. And then I could, as an adult now, empathize with anybody who, as an adult, was impacted by that moment. So to me, I was like, oh my God, this is a relatable way to enter the conversation of getting to know these characters without really getting to know them just yet.
Yeah, I really like that you pointed that out. It's funny, like now as an adult, like I'm more scared of things. Like it's like, oh man, I miss being young and like feeling like you didn't have this fear of things, right? And yeah, I really made some tough decisions myself. I find myself apologizing still to my parents, like, oh, I'm so sorry for some of the stuff I did.
How am I alive?
That too. I think back and I'm like, oh my gosh, and like, oh, Alyse. But you know, luckily I grew up and I figured my stuff out. And
it makes me think, like, what would this experience be like to read this book when I was a teenager versus as an adult? Because we entered this book with such a different perspective.
Yeah, we totally do. I think we enter it as an adult perspective, and then also again as two people who work. I mean, I'm just like you when I read YA. I can't help but like have my educator hat on. I'm trying to like take it off and just enjoy the book for what it is, but you're going to see it from a different lens. And Yeah, that's really cool. Now it makes me want to go bug some kids. Like, hey, did you guys read this? I want to know your thoughts
Yeah,
about this.
like some
I
very
need to read it.
graphic book.
Yeah, it took a turn, guys. I'm not gonna lie. So when they said it was rated R, I was so excited. I'm like, okay, are they gonna PG-13 this? Because I really think this book is borderline not YA. Because guys, I will warn you, there is a lot of violence in this book. And I'm gonna assume the movie's gonna have just as much, if I haven't said that already.
Yes, yeah, and I think it might. I don't know. This is my educator hat here. Hopefully, like it opens up students to young people to think like, oh, okay, this book is available. I like the movie. Maybe I'll read it. That could be interesting to see. Maybe if it like helps with some, literacy. Maybe like on social media they start like promoting it. So I'm hopeful that maybe. I don't know. I'm always like pushing reading. So
Same. I'm always the same way. I'm like, guys, come on, let's read. Or I'm like, telling them about different things. And what I really like is that this book was even available through like Cloud Library. You could read it, and through Libby, which are, both library apps. So you could read it, or if you prefer to listen. So it is accessible. I mean, at least in my area, I know with each library branch, it varies. But, I'm a big supporter of if kids can. If they can't find a way to get a hold of the book, you can always try to find it through your local library where you don't have to spend money out of your pocket. So yeah, I do hope some kids go. It does encourage more reading, because why not?
yes, and I love the audiobook narrator. I think they're the same one for all three books, if I'm not mistaken. And I love their narration of Quinn and Rust and Nicole, and like you could just see that they really, I don't know, it's
good.
One of the best. Yeah, incredible voice acting.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any spoiler-free thoughts on books 2 and 3 that you want to share?
I could share my views on them, like my level of joy. So I really enjoyed the second one. And I think if I think about it more, like they probably wrote this heavily informed by like Scream, because it is like a slasher that they try to like change the setting, change the theme, and change a lot of things. But essentially, I think Adam Cesare loves to play with trope, play with expectation, alter it here and there. So the second one I definitely enjoyed, not as much as the first, but I did enjoy that there was a development, the question of like what happens after you experience this level of trauma. So the seriousness upon which mental health is taken in that second book, and realistically so, just like always looking over your shoulder, being perceived, like how is the world seeing me? And it's social media.
Yes.
That is a huge aspect of this and contributing quite negatively to people's mental health. And you can't escape certain things in that second book. So I enjoyed it, not as much as maybe like the first one. The third one,
I had a little more trouble.
I actually did not like that one.
Yeah,
the first time I read it, I actually actively hated it. I was incredibly confused. It went to very different directions.
Yes.
It was kind of unhinged in a way that like I think it's hard to do in the third book of a series where you've set up this world, you've set up these expectations for me as a reader. And so I think there were people who enjoyed the book, I'm sure, and I think he had a great time writing it. I just feel like it was so different than the third, and I still haven't been able to articulate and figure out why I wasn't on board with that change.
Oh my gosh, we have the same views on all three of them. I love the first one. It's always hard to do a sequel, whether it's a movie or a follow-up book.
Yep.
I enjoyed the second one, again, not as much as the first one. I love that they helped her. We saw her dealing with grief. We saw, I'm almost spoiling stuff. We saw different characters dealing with grief and trauma.
Yeah.
And the third one, it was really, I won't lie, it was really hard for me.
It was too much.
I had to finish it just because I was like, I've already done 1 and 2.
Yep.
I trudged through it. I almost didn't finish it.
Same.
It was hard. So that's all I can really say.
Same. Yeah. I was like, womp, womp, womp. I wish it wasn't like there's just too much going on. And I would have appreciated if one of those threads was like kind of removed. And then there's also a character where I didn't understand why they went that route. Like a major character was making decisions where I'm confused. I don't understand. And I thought I understood this character pretty well. I didn't get it.
Yeah. And I like the setting change in the second book too, right? It took us to we weren't in a cornfield so much. We were other places. So, and that did have Scream vibes.
Yeah.
But
they go to college. Yeah. In the second one. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly like Scream 2, where it's in a college setting. Do you have any final thoughts?
I'm really excited for this movie. I think that this book in this series is so popular for a reason, because it provides, I think, a really fun way of looking at slasher movies. And the clown, I think for me, when I think of Clown in the Cornfield, I find myself on my YouTube channel talking about it, mostly associated with like Halloween because of the campiness of the book. And I'm, like I've mentioned before, very curious to see like if they lean into the campy or if the tone is like super sinister. I think I'm open to either or, as long as it's very atmospheric. Like I want to feel like I am in the Midwest. I want to feel like I'm isolated. I want there to, whatever the season is that they're placing this in, I want to feel the chill, or I want to feel the heat. I want to see clowns everywhere. I want it to be like dusty images. I want to see that the broken down parts of the town that have seen better days. And I really want the characters to ring true to the essence of like how Adam Cesare originally wrote them, because I think that there's a lot of talk. But this series is pretty popular. And I think there are some expectations on how things are going to go. I'm open to seeing where it goes, and I'm very excited to see how certain scenes play out. And so, yeah, those are wild. That's going to be a wild time. So we'll see if my little heart can handle the movie. But I highly recommend reading the book if anybody is at all interested in seeing what Frendo is getting up to.
Yeah, and it's a really easy read. It's not a long read. It's not complicated. The audiobook is very enjoyable, just like you mentioned. I like the narrator. I thought she did a really good job with changing the voices and whatnot. I'm always amazed by people who are voice actors. I had my last interview was with the voice actors, and she amazes me, the things that they can do with their voices, and the narrator of this book does the same. I'm very curious as well how they're going to handle specific relationships, how they're going to handle the constant movement. There's a lot of movement in this,
Yes.
from place to place.
Yes.
I as well enjoyed the atmosphere. I mean, again, I found myself literally like writing out, and I'm now talking about, I feel like I was almost making myself a little map. Oh, this is Quinn's house, and this is the cornfield,
Yes.
and this is the factory, and this is where the eatery is, and this is where the school is, and this is where the opening scene takes place, right, with the lake and the rocks. And I think it really sucked me in. I felt like I was in that book, and just like you, I've never lived in anywhere that's super remote. I mean, I live in a city where I can go a little bit of ways. I mean, in California, we have that, right? You can go to a more remote area, but I've never lived in a remote area. I've only been in like a suburb type area.
Yeah.
I visit the big city regularly. So I'm hoping to get enveloped by it all and feeling that vibes. And yeah, it's gonna be totally interesting. I can't wait after to like compare the two and have more conversations with people comparing the two. So yes, guys, check the book out. It's a really fun read. It's an easy read.
100%.
Yeah. Lauren, so tell us about your channel, your YouTube channel, and where people can find your YouTube channel, what you have going on there, your social media, things like that.
My YouTube channel is Happy Haunts Library, where I create all things spooky and Halloween related all year long. Because for me, Halloween is something that I find so much comfort in, a sense of safety and nostalgia from my childhood, that to be able to use that in little moments throughout my life, whether it's during fall months or outside of it, is really, really fun, enjoyable, and a little bit of like self-care. So I create videos where I'm talking about horror books and horror movies, or I'm talking about games, whether they're video games or board games that are spooky or like Halloween horror adjacent. Anything in my free time, I just love sharing it. And it's been a really fun project where it's so different than what I do for work, which is teaching. So I really enjoy being able to connect with people on a topic, horror, Halloween, where I don't necessarily have people in my daily life who love it to the same level of intensity as I do. I tend to go really hard for the things I love. So it's really great to be able to connect with folks like Alyse, where we have a lot of things that are very similar in our professional lives, and then be able to connect over this. I think it makes sense why there's so many great podcasts and YouTube channels on there, because it is kind of niche. And so when you're able to like connect with other people around this, it's truly special because there's literally so much to talk about.
Yeah, it's fun. I nerd out watching your videos. I love watching them. I love your hobby videos. Just your whole aesthetics of everything. I kudos to you. I really like your channel. So guys, please check out Happy Haunts Library. And are you on social media as well, people, or you're not big on that?
I do have Instagram. I'll like post here and there, but my one true love is long form content like YouTube.
Got you. All right. Well, guys, I hope you guys really enjoyed this, and thank you so much, Lauren. It was really fun to kind of do a deep dive. I guess you could say we did, when we tried to keep it as spoiler free. not hitting anything too big for you guys. And hopefully we can come back again at some point. Maybe we could talk about the movie and kind of do comparisons.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's been really fun. So thank you. And everybody else, I appreciate you guys listening. If you want to find me, I'm also on Instagram at Dreadful Dialogue Podcast. I have a website as well where I have some of my blogs about places I've gone and things I'm doing at dreadfuldialogue.com. And with that, thank you guys. I hope our conversation wasn't too dreadful for you guys, and have a good one.